Hey guys, welcome back to another video. To the book The Adventure of Sherlock Holmes. So we completed chapter 1 in the last video. So let's continue with chapter 2. So the chapter 2 name is The Red-Headed League. So let's start this chapter. I visited my friend Sherlock Holmes one afternoon in the autumn season of last year and found him talking to a client with fiery red hair. I apologized for the intrusion and was about to leave when Sherlock pulled me back in the room and asked me to sit. "You could have not come at a better time," Sherlock exclaimed. He introduced me to the red-haired gentleman, Mr. Wilson. Sherlock sat down in his armchair, putting his fingertips together, as was his custom. "You share my love for the bizarre, Doctor. Sit down, as this is the most bizarre one. Mr. Jabez William here visited me this morning with a case that is one of my strangest and the most unique cases," said Sherlock. Sherlock caught me trying to read his client and smiled. "Mr. Wilson has done something manual labor, takes snuff, is a Freemason, has been to China, and has lately spent considerable time writing. Beside that, I can deduce nothing else," Sherlock said, smiling. Mr. Wilson's face turned white with surprise. He asked Sherlock how he knew all that. Sherlock explained that since Mr. Wilson's right hand was more developed than his left, it indicated that he worked as a manual labor. His fish tattoo and the Chinese coin he had on his watch chain showed he has been to China, and the breast pin indicated him being a Freemason. Sherlock then asked our client to begin his narrative so that I could listen the full story. He pulled out an advertisement from the newspaper. "Here, this is what started it all," he said, handing me the paper. It read as follows: "To the Red-Headed League. On the account of death of the late Ezekiah Hopkins, there is now a vacancy which grants a salary of €4 a week for nominal services. All red-handed men are invited to apply on Monday at 11 a.m. to Duncan Rose at the League's office, 7 Pops Court, Fleet Street." "What in the world does this mean?" I blurted after having read the advertisement twice. Sherlock chuckled and remarked that it was indeed quite amusing and queer. He then asked Mr. Wilson to tell about his business, his life, and the effect of advertisement on his fortunes. "I have a small pawnbroker's business at Coburg Square. Business is slow these days. I used to have 2 assistants, but now I can afford only one, that too because the young lad is working for half the wages to learn the business," Mr. Wilson said. "What is the young lad's name?" Sherlock asked. "His name is Vincent Spaulding. He is a good worker, could earn twice as much as I am paying him. His only fault is that he loves taking photos and spend hours in the cellar developing them," Mr. Wilson replied. "Interesting," Sherlock said as he leaned back in his armchair. "Do continue." Mr. Wilson began his narrative. The advertisement was brought to him by his assistant, Vincent Spaulding. He seemed to know a great deal about the history of League of Red-Headed Men. It was he who had persuaded him to apply for that post. He said that vacancy was worth a fortune, and trustees do not know what to do with the money. He exclaimed that if his hair could change color, he would apply for the post. I am a very simple man, Mr. Holmes. I hardly go out and my business comes to me. Sometimes I do not step out of the house for days together. I wanted to know more about the Red-Headed League, and Spaulding was ready to tell me. He said that the work amounted to a couple of hundred a year, but the work was little. It would not interfere with other affairs, and since his business was not exactly flourishing, Mr. Wilson thought it would be a good way to earn some extra money. Wilson continued. Spaulding showed me the advertisement and pointed out the address. He explained how the league was founded by Ezekiah Hopkins, who was a red-headed American millionaire. When he died, he left a huge fortune in the hands of the trustees with instructions to give the interest to red-headed men. I told him that many men would apply, but he said that there were not many who had exactly the kind of red hair that was required. When Mr. Wilson went to Fleet Street to apply for the post, he took Vincent with him. The streets of London were covered in red. Men with every shade of red hair were out on streets, he said, recalling that day. His good assistant helped him get through the crowd and to the desk of the man in charge of filing the vacancy. He was a man with fiery red hair as well, and was rejecting everyone by finding some fault in their hair. When Mr. Wilson's turn came, he got up and pulled his hair sharply, then went on to explain it was a test against wigs and paint. The man, who introduced himself as Duncan Rose, went on to announce that vacancy has been filled, then to turn to Mr. Wilson and congratulated him. The work Mr. Wilson had to do was a nominal and would not interfere with his business. He had to come to the office daily with his own pen and paper, a copy the Encyclopedia Britannica from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Since Mr. Wilson was a pawnbroker, his business was mostly in the evening, especially on Thursdays and Fridays. It suited him to work in the morning and earn something extra. Moreover, he knew that Spaulding would look after the business in his absence. The work was easy, and for that he would be paid £4 a week. But under no circumstances was he to leave the office during those hours. And if he left, he would be giving up his pay and the post forever. I assured him that I would not leave the office during working hours, and he congratulated me on getting the important job. I was pleased with my good fortune, but I was a little disturbed in the evening. I felt that the whole affair might be a hoax of some kind. So this was the part 1 of the chapter 2. I'll see you in part 2 of chapter 2. Bye. See you in the next video.